Good evening and welcome. This is the 10th annual Rendition annual fundraising concert that we hold in the spring. I am Dave Gretzinger, the president of the band this year. And I don't know what brought you here tonight. Maybe it was a family member on the stage. Maybe it was your love of live music. Maybe it's your love of jazz, or maybe it's all of those things. But we welcome you here. I can tell you that on this stage, though, with me, they're all here because they love to perform and they love to play these charts they've been working on for the past several months. Over the next couple of hours, you'll see why they enjoy it so much. Now, other music styles may get more hits on YouTube or plays on Spotify, but none of as broad an appeal as jazz music. So tonight we have a group of teens playing music they love to an appreciative audience, ranging from children to grandparents, maybe even some great-grandparents here. This is not an uncommon scenario, but why does jazz have such a diverse audience? Well, I think jazz permits new invention. It's rebellious enough to be of interest to youth. It's also technical and challenging enough to be of interest to a true musician, a true artist. It's also old enough to maybe have some nostalgia for older people like me or even older. So you see, jazz is creative. It's never the same thing twice. Playing off the page or improvisation is core to the jazz experience, and you'll hear a lot of that tonight. You already heard some improvisation. Now, something you may not know is that the mayor of Oakville is also, and who I'm going to ask to join me on the stage in a moment. He's a huge fan of the arts and specifically of jazz music. So he's joined us this evening, not just to carry out some obligation as our civic leader, but because he's genuinely interested in this performance. So I'd like to welcome Mayor Burton to the stage now for some opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Dave. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure on behalf of all of the mayors of the Halton region, because I know that this band can draw members from all over Halton region, and the five heads of council of Halton, we call ourselves the Five Amigos because we share the spirit of neighborly cooperation that everyone in our community does, and we love to see it in action as we continue to lead our communities. So my congratulations and their congratulations are furnished tonight on your great success. This is your 10th anniversary. Only a little while ago it was my 10th anniversary, possibly because of that coincidence, but also because of my love for jazz. I love your band. I really, I've been delighted at the way you've flourished, and it's my pleasure to engage you whenever I can at functions in Oakville. And why do I like it? Well, jazz, in my opinion, is the music of freedom, and it is the musical language that we use to express our deepest and truest feelings. And I've seen that in you from the start, and I'm here with my lovely wife, Wendy, tonight to experience it more tonight. And I thank you for the success that you are and that you will be, and I couldn't be prouder of this, of your achievement. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Burton. I also have the privilege of welcoming MPP Indira Naidu-Harris to the stage for some welcoming remarks. She'll be up in a moment. And so MP Naidu-Harris has been the representative in the provincial legislature for Halton riding since 2014 and was recently appointed as Ontario's Minister of the Status of Women and Minister responsible for early years and child care. So welcome to the stage, MP Naidu-Harris.
A bit. There we go. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and good evening, everyone. I cannot tell you how pleased I am to be here, and I want to just echo the words of the mayor, who's a good friend of mine. I am also a really huge fan of jazz, and I actually grew up in a household where that was the music that we listened to every day, and we continue to listen to jazz all the time. Our children have certainly grown up in a household full of jazz and full of that vibrancy and that vibrant music that I think really feeds our soul. You know, I think that music oftentimes is the heart and soul of a community. It's a reflection of what a community is all about. And so High Rendition Jazz and these young people here this evening up on this stage, just showing off what they're capable of, is something I think that all of us here in this audience, you know, families, friends, and those of us who are just members of the community, we are all really proud of you, because you are all doing such a fantastic job. So I'm going to ask you all to just give them a round of applause. Because I think it takes a lot of hard work to get up here on the stage. You all know that. Those of you who are the parents and the grandparents and the friends know that there's a lot of time spent practicing, a lot of time with some heartache about whether or not they're going to get it right. But you've all made it. You've made it up on the stage. You're here with High Rendition Jazz. You're showing off to your friends, but more importantly to your family, what that was all about. And that journey to get here is something that I think we all appreciate. So tonight, I'm going to say to the moms and dads who are out there, and the aunts and the uncles and the grandparents, relax, take a moment, just close your eyes, and just think to yourselves, this is what it was all about. All those practices, all that hard work. Your young people, your kids are up here on stage doing a fantastic and a fabulous job, and we are all so proud of you. So thank you for having me. I think this is a wonderful event, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy as much of it as I can. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so you may have noticed quite a lot of gear on the stage today, so I thought it's fair to warn you that this concert is being recorded. So if you want to provide some extra encouragement to the band and get yourself on recording, that's fine. It's the first time we've attempted a professional live recording, and so we're pleased to have Oliver Vadas and his team to put this together for us. So thank you for that. And now, please join me in welcoming back musical director Mr. Carmen Ghazi of the High Rendition Jazz Band.
Thank you. I'm not going to speak a lot, I don't think. We're going to change gears here stylistically. We move from the funk style into the swing style with a piece called Scrapple from the Apple. Thank you. That was Owen on trumpet and Mateus on the tenor saxophone. This thing is really high. I'm just going to lower it a little bit. Okay. So the first chart we did was kind of a funk chart. And this piece was a swing style. Now we're going to go right in between. And we're going to do a piece that was written by a songwriting duo that was flourishing back in the 70s and still writing and recording today. It's Walter Becker and Donald Fagen. They formed essentially the group called Steely Dan. And hopefully you've had a chance to listen to some of their material. This is one of their early tunes. It is called Peg, and this will feature Vlad on guitar and I think Nathan on trumpet. Yes, this is Peg. Thank you. That was a chart called "For Pete's Sake," and ironically enough, Peter was featured on the piano during that, as well as Sarah on trumpet, and Yuan on alto sax, and Nathan on drums. Who have I left out? I know I've left out someone. Is it possible I got everyone? It's hard to believe. I usually forget someone. Okay, so I talked to you a little bit about the songwriting team of Fagan and Becker. There was another pretty successful songwriting team way back then, maybe a little bit earlier, known as Lennon McCartney. Yeah, they had a couple of hits. Anyway, one of their tunes has been arranged in a rather unique way, and we'd like to do it for you tonight. I think it might be on the second half in your program. I know a number of you are looking at me saying, what's he doing? He's all over the place. Actually, we did a little housekeeping on that program, and we've flipped a couple of things around. So you might be in for another surprise or two later on. Anyway, this is a piece called Blackbird, and this will feature Tatum and Owen on trumpet. I think you'll like this, Ray. And if you don't, pretend you do. that's not a bad arrangement of Blackbird, huh? That's a little bit different than the originals. Yes, I pat myself on the back for selecting that chart quite a bit, because nobody else does, so I'm going to anyway. Now, we're going to move on to another piece that is, it's been out there for a while, but again, not quite in this rendition, in the high rendition. They'll be cutting that from the recording, I'm sure. We'd like to feature Tess Oxness on this piece. This is a piece called Wave, and it was written by Antonio Carlos Sobim, but arranged by Michael Philip Mossman. This is Wave. now we're going to ask another one of our players to step out of that section that she plays in and come down and do a vocal number for you. This piece is called A Foggy Day in London Town, and this will feature Chantal from our trumpet section. Here we go.
Foggy day in London town, had me low, had me down. I view in the morning with such alarm. Your British Museum had lost its charm. How long I've wondered, could this thing last? But the age of miracles hadn't passed, for suddenly I saw you there, and in the foggy London town the sun was shining everywhere. Oh, a foggy day in London town had me low, had me down. I view the morning with such alarm. Your British Museum had lost its charm. How long, I wonder, could this thing last? But the age of miracles hadn't passed, for suddenly I saw you there, and in the foggy London town the sun was shining. Oh, everywhere.
Boy, it's really quiet out there. You guys can make a little more noise if you want to. You know, you can rustle your feet or feel like I'm. Anyway, we're gonna close out the first set with a piece written again. This hate to age myself. This goes back 70s at least, maybe middle 70s. Made popular by a group called Tower of Power. Yeah, and they asked the age-old question. Thank you. Shall we try that again? You didn't do it at all this way in rehearsal. They asked the age-old question. What is it? All right, I'm going to have the audience try it. They asked the age-old question. What is it? Thank you.